The stars had been quiet for 300 years. Across the galaxy, 17 different alien races lived together in peace. They traded with each other, shared knowledge, and never fought wars anymore. The Galactic Council made sure everyone got along. The Zephyrians were tall, thin beings made of living crystal. They spent their days creating beautiful music that could make entire planets sing. Their cities floated in space, glowing with soft blue light. When they spoke, their voices sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. They had not held a weapon in over 500 years. The Aquarians lived in giant water bubbles that drifted between stars. Their bodies looked like graceful jellyfish, and they could change colors to show their emotions. Purple meant happiness, silver meant deep thought, and gold meant they were sharing stories. They had forgotten what anger looked like because they had not felt it in so long. The Nexus were machines that had once been biological creatures. Long ago, they had uploaded their minds into metal bodies that never grew old or tired. They spent their time solving mathematical puzzles that took centuries to complete. Their robot bodies had no weapons built into them, only tools for building and creating. On the forest world of Verdania, the tree people had grown so tall that their heads touched the clouds. They moved very slowly and thought even more slowly. A single conversation between two tree people could take an entire year. They had become so peaceful that even the idea of hurting someone was impossible for them to understand. The council met once every 10 years on a massive space station called Harmony Point. The station was bigger than most moons and had gardens from 1,000 different worlds. Representatives from all 17 races would gather to discuss trade routes, share new discoveries, and make sure everyone remained happy and peaceful. During these meetings, they would sometimes talk about the strange signals they had picked up from a distant part of the galaxy. The signals came from a small blue planet in a system called Sol. The beings there called their world Earth, and they seemed very different from the council races. The Earth signals were loud and chaotic. They contained sounds of violence, anger, and something the peaceful races found disturbing: organized fighting between large groups. The humans, as they called themselves, seemed to spend much of their time in conflict with each other. Their radio transmissions spoke of wars, weapons, and destruction on a scale that made the council members feel uncomfortable. Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrians had studied these signals for many years. During one council meeting, he shared his findings with the others. "These humans appear to be stuck in a primitive stage of development," he said, his crystal body flickering with concern. "They fight over resources, territory, and ideas. They have weapons that could destroy their entire planet." The Aquarian representative, Flowing Dream, pulsed a deep purple color that meant sadness. "Perhaps they will grow beyond this phase," she said hopefully. "All races must learn to live in peace eventually." The Nexus delegate, Unit Prime, processed the data with mechanical precision. Statistical analysis suggests a 73% probability that they will destroy themselves within their next 100 rotations around their star, it announced in its emotionless voice. For 50 years, the Council continued to monitor Earth's transmissions. They heard about wars spreading across continents, weapons growing more powerful, and conflicts that seemed to have no end. Some council members suggested making contact to help guide the humans toward peace. Others worried that such a violent race might spread their aggression to other worlds. Then, quite suddenly, the signal stopped. At first, the council thought their listening equipment had broken down. They sent repair teams to check all the monitoring stations scattered across their territory. Everything was working perfectly. Earth had simply gone silent. Some council members felt relieved. Elder Moon Whisper of the Tree People took 3 months to express his thoughts on the matter. "Perhaps," he said finally, "they have found peace at last." Others were more pessimistic. Commander Zix of the Flying Skyborn race believed the humans had destroyed themselves in some final, terrible war. "They were too violent to survive," he said sadly. "It was inevitable." As the years passed, Earth's silence became strangely comforting to the council races. The violent transmissions that had once disturbed their peaceful meetings were gone. The galaxy felt safer, quieter, more harmonious than ever before. Trade flourished between the worlds. Art and science reached new heights. The Zephyrians created music so beautiful that it could heal broken hearts. The Aquarians wrote poetry that made readers weep with joy. The Nexus solved problems that had puzzled scientists for thousands of years. The Tree People grew gardens so magnificent that they could be seen from space. The galaxy had never been more peaceful. Wars were something that existed only in ancient history books. Weapons were artifacts in museums, relics of a more primitive time. Children of all races grew up never knowing fear, never wondering if tomorrow would bring violence or destruction. The council members congratulated themselves on creating such a perfect society. They had evolved beyond their ancestors' crude ways. They had built something beautiful and lasting. Earth remained silent, a small blue dot in the vast darkness. Most council members had forgotten it existed. The few who remembered it thought of it as a cautionary tale about what happened to races that could not learn to live in peace. The silence was indeed comforting. It meant the galaxy was safe. The peace ended on a Tuesday morning when the scanning stations at the edge of council space detected something impossible. Ships were approaching from the dark void beyond the galaxy's rim, but these were not ships like anything the council had ever seen before. The first reports came from the Epsilon monitoring station, operated by a small team of Nexus units who spent their time cataloging distant star movements. Unit 7 was performing routine scans when its sensors registered massive energy signatures, moving at incredible speeds toward Council territory. Alert. Unknown vessels detected at coordinates 77 Mark 9. Unit 7 transmitted to Harmony Point. Configuration unknown. Technology unknown. Intent unknown. Within hours, the unknown ships had reached the outer colonies. The first world to make contact was Kepler Prime, home to 2 billion peaceful Zephyrians who had spent centuries growing the largest crystal gardens in the galaxy. The planet's beauty was legendary, with crystal forests that sang in harmony with the planet's 3 moons. The attacking ships were unlike anything in Council records. They looked alive, with hulls that pulsed like beating hearts and weapons that seemed to grow from their surfaces like thorns. The ships breathed, expanding and contracting as they moved through space. Some had tentacles that whipped through the void, while others sprouted new weapons as they engaged in battle. The Zephyrians had no weapons to defend themselves. Their security forces carried only crowd control devices designed to stop occasional accidents or help with emergencies. When the living ships descended upon Kepler Prime, the crystal beings could only watch in horror as their beautiful cities were torn apart. Commander Veltar, the same Zephyrian who had once studied Earth's violent transmissions, sent a desperate message to the Council. Under attack by unknown organic vessels, our crystal cities are being dissolved by some kind of acid weapon. We have no defenses. We need help immediately. The message was the last transmission received from Kepler Prime. When Council rescue ships arrived 3 days later, they found a dead world. The crystal forests had been reduced to glowing puddles of liquid. The singing mountains were silent. 2 billion Zephyrians had simply vanished. The attacking fleet had already moved on to their next target, the waterworld of Aquatica, home to the peaceful jellyfish-like Aquarians. The living ships seemed to learn from each battle, adapting their weapons and tactics. What had taken them 3 days to accomplish on Kepler Prime, they finished on Aquatica in just 18 hours. Flowing Dream, the Aquarian representative who had once hoped the humans might find peace, managed to escape in an emergency pod before her world fell. She arrived at Harmony Point with her body permanently changed to a deep black color, the Aquarian expression of absolute terror. "They're not just destroying our worlds," she reported to the emergency council session. "They're consuming them. The ships get bigger after each battle. They're feeding on our planets, our people, everything." The invaders called themselves the Korthak, and they were everything the peaceful council races had evolved beyond. They lived for war, bred for destruction, and saw other species as nothing more than resources to be harvested. Their ships were alive because they were made from the processed remains of conquered civilizations. Within 6 months, 7 council worlds had fallen. The Nexus tried to fight back with their logical, calculated defense strategies, but the Korthak ships learned and adapted faster than the machines could process new tactics. The tree people of Verdania were too slow to evacuate, and their ancient forests became fuel for the growing Korthak fleet. The Skyborn tried to use their speed to hit and run, but the Korthak ships sprouted wings and tentacles that could catch even the fastest flyers. The gas-dwelling Nebulon tried to hide in their cloud cities, but the Korthak developed atmospheric processors that could strip entire planets of their air in hours. As the Korthak fleet pressed deeper into Council space, panic spread among the peaceful races. They had no armies, no weapons, no knowledge of how to fight a war. Their leaders had spent centuries perfecting the art of negotiation and compromise, but the Korthak did not negotiate. They only consumed. Elder Moonwhisper of the Tree People, one of the few survivors from Verdania, spoke to the council with uncharacteristic speed. We have forgotten something important. In our rush to become peaceful, we forgot that peace must sometimes be defended. The council faced a terrible choice. They could flee deeper into the galaxy, abandoning their outer worlds to the Korthak, but that would only delay the inevitable. Or they could make a desperate gamble that had never been attempted before. Deep in the Council archives was an ancient emergency protocol called the Galactic Distress Signal. It had been created thousands of years ago but never used. The protocol would broadcast a plea for help to every corner of the galaxy, reaching out to any civilization capable of receiving it. "We have no choice," announced Council Speaker Luminous Song, their energy form flickering with desperation. "Activate Protocol 7. Send the signal to every star system, every world, every species that might be listening. Tell them we need help." The signal went out on every frequency in every known language, carrying a simple message. "This is the Galactic Council. We are under attack by hostile forces. Our peaceful civilizations face extinction. Any species capable of military assistance, please respond. Coordinates and tactical data attached." Most council members knew it was probably useless. What advanced civilization would risk destruction to help strangers? But with Korthak ships only weeks away from the core worlds, desperation was all they had left. The distress signal spread across the galaxy like ripples in a pond, reaching distant stars and forgotten worlds. In the far corner of space, on a small blue planet that had been silent for decades, someone was listening. The response came from the last place anyone expected. Deep in the Council's emergency command center on Harmony Point, communications, Officer Zara 9 was monitoring the distress signal broadcasts when her equipment suddenly crackled to life. The transmission was weak but clear, coming from the direction of the Sol system. "Galactic Council, this is Terra Command," the voice said in heavily accented but understandable Galactic Standard. "We have received your distress signal and analyzed the tactical data. Human Expeditionary Fleet is preparing for immediate deployment. Estimated arrival time, 47 standard days. Message ends." Zara 9 stared at her equipment in confusion. She ran the message through her translation systems 3 times to make sure she had heard correctly. Terra? That was the ancient name for Earth, the violent world that had gone silent decades ago. "Council Speaker," she called out, her voice shaking slightly. "We have a response to the distress signal." The emergency session was called immediately. Representatives from the surviving council worlds gathered in the great chamber, their faces showing mixtures of hope and confusion. Council Speaker Luminous Song's energy form pulsed with nervous light as the message was played again. "Impossible," stated Commander Zix of the Skyborn. "Our long-range sensors show no major industrial activity in that system." How could they have built a fleet capable of interstellar travel? Flowing Dream, the Aquarian survivor, shifted to a cautious yellow color. "Perhaps they have been building in secret. But why would they help us?" Their old transmissions showed they were constantly fighting among themselves. The debate continued for hours, but there was little time to waste. The Korthak fleet was pressing closer to the core worlds, and every day brought new reports of destroyed colonies and consumed populations. If the humans were truly offering help, the Council had no choice but to accept. 43 days later, the first human ships appeared at the edge of Council space. The Advanced Scout was a sleek vessel that moved with predatory grace. Nothing like the primitive rockets the Council had expected. It transmitted a request for permission to dock at Harmony Point. When the airlock opened, the council representatives got their first look at a human in person. Commander Lee Ji-hoon stepped onto the station wearing a crisp blue uniform covered in symbols and badges. He was shorter than most council species, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything around him with sharp intelligence. "Honored council members," he said with a slight bow. "I am Commander Lee Ji-hoon of the Korean Stellar Navy, Advanced Liaison for the Terra Expeditionary Force. Admiral Park Sung-min will arrive with the main fleet in 4 days." The council members exchanged glances. The human spoke their language perfectly, showed knowledge of their customs, and carried himself with the confidence of someone who had fought in real battles. "Commander Lee," said Council Speaker Luminous Song, "we appreciate your response to our distress call, but we must ask, how is it possible that your people have developed such advanced technology? Our records show your world went silent decades ago." Commander Lee's expression remained neutral. "With respect, Council Speaker, just because we stopped broadcasting doesn't mean we stopped listening. We have been monitoring galactic communications for over 60 years. We know about your trade routes, your technology, your history. We also know about the Korthak threat." He activated a small device that projected a holographic display into the air. The image showed detailed tactical analyses of every Korthak battle, complete with fleet compositions, weapon capabilities, and strategic patterns. "We have been studying your enemy," Lee continued. "The Korthak are dangerous, but they are not invincible. They have weaknesses that your peaceful civilizations have not been able to exploit." 4 days later, Admiral Park Sung-min arrived with a fleet that stunned everyone at Harmony Point. Over 200 ships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, ranging from massive battleships to swift destroyers. Each vessel bore Korean characters alongside universal designations: Seoul's Pride, Busan Guardian, Incheon's Sword. Admiral Park was a woman in her 50s with graying hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She moved with the careful precision of someone accustomed to command, and when she spoke, even the energy beings of the council listened intently. "Council members," she said during the first joint strategy meeting, "I have reviewed your defensive efforts against the Korthak. Your forces are brave, but you are fighting with the wrong tactics. You treat war like a negotiation, looking for compromises and peaceful solutions. The Korthak only understand strength." She activated the central display, showing current Korthak positions and movement patterns. "My fleet carries weapons and tactics that your enemy has never encountered. We have studied every battle they have fought, every ship they have consumed. We know how they adapt, and we know how to counter their adaptations." Captain Kim So-young of the battleship Daegu Thunder stood up to address the council. "Our people have never forgotten the lessons of war. While you were building a peaceful civilization, we were preparing for the day when peace would need to be defended." The Nexus representative, Unit Prime, processed this information with mechanical precision. Query: why would your species dedicate resources to military preparation when no threat was apparent? Admiral Park's expression grew serious. "Because we learned something your people forgot long ago. Peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is what happens when good people are strong enough to protect what they love." The human fleet had arrived, bringing with them knowledge and capabilities that the Peaceful Council had never imagined. But as the admirals outlined their battle plans, one thing became clear. The war for the galaxy's survival was about to begin, and it would be fought in ways the Council had never seen before. The humans had been silent for decades, but now they were ready to speak in the only language the Korthak would understand. The first joint battle took place in the Centauri sector, where a Korthak biofleet was slowly consuming the mining station Delta 7. The station's automated distress beacon had been broadcasting for 3 days, but no Council ships had been able to get close enough to help. The Korthak vessels had adapted to every weapon the Council forces used, growing new armor and defenses with each attack. Admiral Park Sung-min stood on the bridge of her flagship Seoul's Pride, watching the tactical display with calm eyes. Beside her, Council Admiral Flowing Dream pulsed with nervous orange colors as she coordinated the combined fleet from her bioship Peaceful Current. The Korthak have 17 vessels feeding on the station, reported Captain Kim Dong-woo from the destroyer Busan Lightning. Our scanners show they've grown 30% larger since they started their attack. Admiral Park nodded. That's what we expected. Captain Lee, are your torpedo crews ready? All tubes loaded with kinetic penetrators, Admiral, replied Captain Lee Min-jung from the cruiser Incheon Hammer. Targeting solutions locked in. Flowing Dream watched the human preparations with confusion. The Council had tried every energy weapon in their arsenal against the Korthak ships, only to watch the bio-vessels adapt and grow stronger. Admiral Park, our plasma cannons and particle beams have proved ineffective. What makes you think your weapons will work? Because, Admiral Park said with a slight smile, we're not using energy weapons. The human fleet moved into attack formation, but it was unlike anything the Council forces had ever seen. Instead of the careful defensive positions the Council preferred, the human ships arranged themselves in an aggressive wedge formation with the fastest vessels at the front. The Korthak detected the approaching fleet and began their usual adaptation process. Their bioships started growing new sensor arrays and defensive scales, preparing for another round of energy weapons that they could easily counter. All ships, execute Thunder Pattern Alpha, Admiral Park commanded. The human destroyers Busan, Lightning and Gwangju Storm accelerated straight toward the Korthak fleet at maximum speed. The bioships prepared to fire their acid projectors, but the human vessels suddenly changed course, splitting apart and diving below the enemy formation. At the same moment, the heavy cruisers opened fire, but instead of energy beams, they launched solid metal projectiles. Massive tungsten rods accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic rails. The kinetic torpedoes struck the Korthak ships before the bio-vessels could react. The living ships had no defense against simple, fast-moving metal. Their adaptive armor was designed to counter energy attacks, but the tungsten rods punched through their hulls like bullets through paper. 3 Korthak vessels were destroyed in the first salvo, their biomatter scattering into space. Impossible, gasped Unit Prime, the Nexus observer. How can primitive kinetic weapons succeed where our advanced energy systems failed? Captain Park Ji-won of the battleship Soul Sword answered over the communication channel. Sometimes the old ways work best. Our ancestors fought with rocks and sticks long before they discovered fire. The Korthak fleet tried to adapt, growing thicker armor and changing their formation. But the human tactics were constantly shifting. When the bioships formed a defensive sphere, the human vessels split into small groups and attacked from multiple directions. When the Korthak tried to chase the faster human ships, the heavy battleships would appear from behind asteroids and deliver devastating broadsides. Captain Kim Yoo-na commanded the assault carrier Daegu Warrior, which launched dozens of small fighter craft. The Korthak had never faced such tiny, fast-moving targets before. Their weapons were designed to fight large capital ships, not swarms of single-pilot fighters that could dart between their tentacles and plant explosives on their hulls. Fox Squadron, target the feeding tubes, Captain Kim ordered. Cut them off from the station. The human pilots flew their fighters with reckless courage that amazed the watching Council forces. They dove straight into the Korthak ship formations, dodging acid sprays and whipping tentacles to reach their targets. Several fighters were destroyed, but their pilot's sacrifice allowed others to complete their missions. Within 20 minutes, the Korthak fleet was in full retreat. Of the 17 bioships that had entered the system, only 4 limped away into hyperspace. The mining station Delta 7 was badly damaged but still intact, its 1,000-person crew alive thanks to the human intervention. During the post-battle briefing, the Council representatives struggled to understand what they had witnessed. The humans had achieved in minutes what Council forces had failed to do in months of fighting. Your tactics are so aggressive, observed Elder Moon Whisper, speaking faster than any tree person had in centuries. You accept casualties without hesitation. How do your crews maintain morale? Captain Lee Jae-sung of the damaged destroyer Ulsan Defender answered from his medical bay, where he was being treated for injuries sustained when his ship was struck by a Korthak acid projector. We fight for something bigger than ourselves. Every person on every ship knows that if we fail, entire civilizations will die. Admiral Park reviewed the battle data with satisfaction. This is just the beginning. The Korthak adapt to familiar threats, but they've never encountered human military doctrine. We have thousands of years of warfare experience to draw from. The council representatives looked at each other with new understanding. The peaceful races had evolved beyond conflict, but in doing so, they had forgotten how to defend themselves when conflict found them. The humans had never forgotten those lessons. As the combined fleet prepared for the next engagement, one thing was clear. The war against the Korthak had taken a dramatic turn. 9 months after the first human ships arrived, the last Korthak stronghold fell in the Vega system. Admiral Park Sung-min stood on the observation deck of her flagship, watching as the final bioship surrendered to the combined Council human fleet. The war that had threatened to destroy galactic civilization was finally over. The victory had come at a price. 12 human ships had been lost, along with hundreds of brave crew members, but their sacrifice had saved billions of lives across 17 different worlds. The Korthak fleet, once numbering in the thousands, had been reduced to a handful of ships that fled back into the dark void beyond the galaxy's edge. Captain Kim Tae-ho of the battleship Incheon's victory transmitted the final report. All Korthak vessels have withdrawn from Council space. The threat has been neutralized. But the galaxy that emerged from the war was very different from the one that had existed before. The peaceful Council races found themselves changed by their experience of conflict. They had learned that sometimes violence was necessary to protect the innocent, that strength could be used for good purposes, and that preparation for war was the best way to ensure peace. The first major change came when the Council voted to create a new position, Military Coordinator. Admiral Park was unanimously chosen for the role, making her the first human to hold a leadership position in galactic government. Her headquarters was established on a new space station called New Sol, built jointly by human and Council engineers. The station was a marvel of combined technology. Human military efficiency merged with Council artistic beauty to create something entirely new. The Zephyrians contributed crystal harmonics that could boost communication signals across vast distances. The Aquarians designed living gardens that could process waste and produce food. The Nexus provided advanced computing systems that could coordinate fleets across multiple star systems. Captain Lee So-young became the first human to command a mixed-species crew when she was assigned to the new destroyer Unity's Edge. Her crew included Zephyrian navigators whose crystal bodies could process hyperspace calculations at incredible speeds, Aquarian engineers who could literally flow through the ship's systems to make repairs, and Nexus tactical officers who could process battle data faster than any organic mind. Working with different species has made us all better, Captain Lee reported during her first mission briefing. The Zephyrians teach us patience and precision. The Aquarians show us flexibility and creativity. The Nexus demonstrate the value of logical thinking. The changes went beyond just military cooperation. On the rebuilt world of Kepler Prime, human architects worked with surviving Zephyrians to create new crystal cities that were both beautiful and defensible. The singing spires still produced their wonderful music, but now they could also generate protective energy shields if needed. The Aquarian worlds requested human military advisors to help design new defense systems. Captain Park Min-ho established the first joint training academy on Aquatica, where young beings from all Council species could learn the basics of strategic thinking and defensive tactics. Even the peaceful tree people of Verdania embraced change. Elder Moonwhisper, who had survived the Korthak attack, worked with human foresters to plant new forests that grew in defensive patterns. The trees were still slow and thoughtful, but now they could provide shelter and protection for entire populations if another threat ever emerged. The Nexus found human military history fascinating and began incorporating human tactical doctrine into their logical systems. Unit Prime, who had survived the war, became the first artificial being to attend the Korean Military Academy on Mars, where it studied the classic battles of human history. Your species has a unique approach to problem solving, Unit Prime observed during graduation ceremonies. You combine logic with intuition, planning with improvisation. This makes you unpredictable to enemies but reliable to allies. Trade between Earth and the Council worlds flourished like never before. Human manufacturing centers on Luna and Mars began producing goods for alien markets, while Council worlds shared their advanced technologies with human colonies. The silent sector around Sol became one of the busiest shipping lanes in the galaxy. Admiral Park established the Galactic Defense Force, a permanent military organization designed to protect all member worlds from future threats. Young humans served alongside alien recruits, learning to fight as part of integrated units that combined the best qualities of each species. Captain Kim Ji-won commanded the first all-species patrol squadron, with ships crewed by mixed teams of humans and aliens. "We're not just defending territory anymore," she explained to new recruits. "We're defending an idea that different species can work together to create something better than any of us could build alone." The most important change was in how the galaxy thought about conflict. War was no longer seen as an ancient evil to be forgotten, but as a tool that could be used to protect the innocent when diplomacy failed. The Council races learned to respect strength while maintaining their commitment to peace. 5 years after the war ended, Ambassador Flowing Dream addressed the annual council meeting with words that would have been impossible before the Korthak invasion. "We have learned that true peace is not the absence of conflict but the presence of justice. Thanks to our human allies, we now have the strength to protect both." The ceremony ended with the dedication of a new memorial on Harmony Point, honoring all those who had died in the war. The monument was built from crystal contributed by the Zephyrians, metals forged by human craftsmen, and living coral grown by the Aquarians. At its center was a simple inscription in every language of the Council. The silence was comforting, but sometimes the galaxy needs someone to answer the call. The galaxy was no longer the same peaceful place it had been before, but it was stronger, safer, and more united than ever before. Earth had answered when the universe called for help, and in doing so, had changed the course of galactic history forever.